A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. As Jesus continued his journey to Jerusalem, he traveled through Samaria and Galilee. As he was entering the village, 10 lepers met him. They stood at a distance from him and raised their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And when he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priest." As they were going, they were cleansed. And one of them, realizing he had been healed, returned, glorifying God in a loud voice, and he fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him. He was a Samaritan. Jesus said in reply, 10 were cleansed, were they not? Where are the other 9? Has none but this foreigner returned to give thanks to God? Then he said to him, "Stand up and go. Your faith has saved you." The Gospel of the Lord. When was the last time you gave or received a kiss to make it better? You know, they say that science tells us that kissing can communicate 80 million bacteria. But loving parents still kiss, pint-sized scraped knees. And it really does help. At the very least, that little gesture, that little kiss proves that we care. So in today's gospel, Jesus didn't act like St. Francis of Assisi, whose feast we just celebrated this week, and kiss the lepers. But one of the 10 got better than he asked for. And so there's a lot of symbolic geography in this gospel that we hear today, the traditional gospel that's often read on Thanksgiving Day. So Jesus is nearing Jerusalem, his ultimate place of trials, and he enters this village that St. Luke leaves nameless so that we can imagine it as a place that we know, a place that we've been to, a place that we need to go to. 10 lepers met him. They remained at a distance, which was appropriate, but they called him by name. They knew about him, and that gave them hope, just to be in his presence, even at a distance. They also called him Master, appealing to him as someone with more power and authority than they had. And an interesting thing, using the word that comes in our Latin liturgy as eleison, Kyrie eleison, they ask for mercy, translated here as pity. Interestingly, in St. Luke's Gospel, pity is what the Father felt for his prodigal son when he was moved with motherly compassion. Mercy, though, is even more active than pity. Pity leads you to feel deeply for someone who is thirsty. Mercy, though, propels me into a search for water. So the lepers are asking for eleison. They want more than sympathy. So Jesus, interestingly, made no gesture and said no, words of healing. He simply told them to go to Jerusalem and show themselves to the priest, go to the temple. Of course, doing that was forbidden. They couldn't even go near because, they were lepers. They were outcasts. So they went away feeling dismissed or hopeful. We have no idea. So we wouldn't know anything more about this story except for the one fellow who actually didn't do what Jesus told him to do. When the Samaritan realized that they had all been cured, he turned his back on Jerusalem and he went back and approached Jesus in an attitude of worship, glorifying God and falling at his feet with Eucharistio, the Greek word for thanks, the Greek word for Mass, Eucharist. So, comparing this story to the child's scraped knee, we understand that all 10 lepers were cured. They all got disinfected. They all begged for mercy, and as they obeyed Jesus' order, the ravages of their disease disappeared, and they became free to move about society. Their lives were absolutely changed for the better. They could go back to being who they were before disease had redefined them. This one fellow, though, realized that Jesus not only cured him, but offered him a relationship of mercy. A relationship of mercy far more valuable than the approval of the priests in the temple. He knew he would never be the same again, so he went back to Jesus. Just as we keep coming back to Jesus, perhaps we are the 10%. Seeing the grateful Samaritan, Jesus must have felt, if we can put ourselves in his position, he must have felt the same conflicting emotions he often felt when trying to teach his closest disciples. He had responded to 10 cries of mercy, and 90% of the petitioners simply went their way after being helped. They obtained what they asked for, and they didn't look further. Then there was this one who got it. He understands that in Jesus' eyes, his identity as a Samaritan made him a leper was meaningless. It was meaningless to Jesus. The Samaritan realized that Jesus' mercy was an ongoing offer to him. By receiving Jesus' mercy, he was redefined and entered into a new and reciprocal relationship with Jesus the Master. So this guy was different. Something more happened to him in the process. And in a sense, that's what happens to us as faithful Christians, as faithful Catholics, coming to Mass each day. As a Samaritan, he knew what it was to be an outcast even before he became diseased. Somehow, he perceived more than the others, more than others who might not be here today. He wasn't just disinfected, but touched profoundly by Jesus' mercy and wanting to give thanks and share that. It healed him of everything that banishment had ever done to him, everything that set him apart and made him feel unworthy. So, when we hear this story, usually on Thanksgiving, we usually interpret this story as a lesson about gratitude. But that might be selling the story a little short. What was it like from Jesus' point of view? Jesus never asked for gratitude, never in the scriptures. St. John quotes him as saying, "I came that they might have life and have it more abundantly." So in this episode, Jesus saw that 9 people got restored to their old life and were open, and only one, though, was open to real abundance. So perhaps this incident is supposed to teach us that God gives us life, hoping that, like the Samaritan we hear today, we'll really get it and try to live in the abundance that brings us here to Mass this morning. Each time we celebrate the liturgy, we pray, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, eleison. And so today's gospel urges us to consider what we hope for in that prayer, in coming to the Eucharist. Our friend, the former leper, shows up to remind us that if we are open, we will receive more than we can imagine. So back to the scriptney. All the moms in heaven would tell us that if we ask for mercy, Jesus will make it all better.